Hello and welcome to Stumped Down the Leg Side, the cricket discussion show on Bizz 99.9 FM Substitute Radio. I'm your host Chukka Wilson. Welcome to the program. So England have just announced their squad for the Ashes tour of Australia, and it contains 16 players and has been published all around the various cricket media sites. And on first impression, it looks very weak, very soft, very inexperienced, and very troubling. So when I think about the two teams as they currently stand, Australia is clearly the superior team. They've got a better group of players, they're in better form, and they've got much more of a coherent group together. But England haven't been doing that bad over recent times, and so I always felt that if a really good England came over to Australia for this summer, for the Ashes, that we were going to see some really good cricket and England were going to provide a good contest. But now, looking at this squad, I'm not so sure. Remember that England brought an amazingly experienced, talented and world-class squad to Australia in 2013-14. But, for various reasons, things did not click into place, they did not build up good momentum, and they got absolutely demolished in the Test series against the likes of Mitchell Starc, Mitchell Johnson and Nathan Lyon. And now, England have brought along a squad that is far less experienced, despite the fact that they've had 4 years to build this team up. So, who is in this squad? So, the old dog are still there. James Anderson, Stuart Broad and Alastair Cook. These players have been around for more than 10 years. They've played over 100 tests. They have been to Australia many times, both successful and otherwise. They have dominated over Australia, and they have been humiliated by Australia over the years. So we've got those three. Then we have the cadre of the New England team, which are the captain Joe Root, Johnny Bairstow, Moeen Ali, and the vice-captain Ben Stokes. These players have been around for about 4 or 5 years. They've got a lot of good performances under their belt. They've had to struggle through the early parts of their career. They've had to really work through troubles, like Johnny Bairstow was dropped, Joe Root was dropped, Moeen Ali had lots of troubles. Ben Stokes had a very poor start to his Test career, where he kept going out for ducks. That cadre is really going to be the forefront of the England team in this Test series. And as for the remaining spots in the squad, they are pretty much all occupied by people who have played either no test, they're either uncapped, or they have played less than 10 test matches, which is remarkable considering that they've had nearly 50 or 45 test matches since the defeat of the Ashes 4 years ago, and yet they have not built up other players to fill in those gaps. Now, some of this is to do with injuries which are unavoidable. So Steve Finn, who would clearly be the third seamer behind Anderson and Broad, is injured and can't play, and they've decided that Mark Wood is just too much of a risk considering his recent series of injuries, and so they're not taking him. And so they've decided to bring in a series of very inexperienced seam bowlers to make up the rest of the squad. And they haven't chosen someone like Liam Plunkett or Tim Bresnan, who could have been a more experienced hand. If James Anderson or Stuart Broad gets injured, then England are in for a world of trouble. Another issue is the upper order batting. So it has now been 5 years since Andrew Strauss retired, and in that time England still do not have a replacement opener partner for Alastair Cook, and they have been chopping and changing continuously in the last 5 years, and including silly little experiments like Joe Root and Moeen Ali. And then when they actually bring in a proper opener, they only give him a certain number of chances, and if he fails, then they just banish him to the county circuit, and he's never heard from again. And so currently it looks like it'll be Stoneman who will be opening the batting with Alastair Cook, and he has only played a handful of test matches over the English summer, and he has not scored a century, and in fact his batting average is very low, and he's totally untested in terms of what he can do. The decision to bring back James Vince, who only played a handful of test matches as well and didn't score many runs and has a test match batting average in the 20s, is another problem. Like, if they wanted James Vince in this Ashes squad, they should have played him the entire summer, not leave him in the county circuit and then suddenly recall him back when all the test matches with the West Indies and South Africa are over. James Vince does not have test match preparation and he's coming into an Ashes series. Next is the wicketkeeper problem. Now, Johnny Bairstow, of course, is the English wicketkeeper, and he's really amazing. He's in great form, he's overcome his troubles, and he looks like a really great international cricketer. But they've decided to bring an uncapped wicketkeeper as Bairstow's understudy, which means that they've decided to not bring Butler along for the tour. It's a very strange thing to do, to bring a totally unknown, uncapped wicketkeeper to play this role. They've got to be thinking that Bairstow will play all 5 test matches and this young kid will be just there for the experience. But perhaps the most egregious sin that England have committed is the decision to not bring a front-line spinner on their tour squad. They have 2 spinners. They have Moeen Ali, and then they have an uncapped leg spinner who averages 42 in first-class cricket, deciding not to bring Adil Rashid or Gareth Batty or anyone else. And that seems like just a remarkable piece of stupidity. When you think about Nathan Lyon and all that he has accomplished over the last 4 or 5 years, the way that he has turned himself into becoming a match winner on Australian soil, the thinking must have been, we have to find someone like Nathan Lyon who can control the game, who can get extra bounce off the pitch, who can have a real attacking field, and yet they've decided to bring Moeen Ali, who is a perfectly good spinner, but he's not a match winner. The only major hauls of wickets that he's ever taken have been against Bangladesh and when India tried to slog him out of the attack. When he is treated a bit more seriously and batsmen try to play him out, he does not take that many wickets because he's not able to really do the great off-spin things of getting dip and bounce and so on. And so Moeen Ali averages in the high 30s in Test cricket with the ball, which is very fair. I think that is about accurate as to how good of a bowler he is. But how can Moeen Ali be the #1 spinner for an English team when they're going to be in Australia, when the pitches will be flat, there'll be very little seam or swing, and it'll be so important to slow down the scoring, to change the momentum of the game, to control the game, to stop batsmen getting out of hand, and to try to get them to make little mistakes which get wicket, bat pad and caught behind off the spinners. It just seems so remarkable that they have not brought someone like Adil Rashid, who is capable of doing that #1 frontline spinner role. So I really have serious doubts about this English team. They have decided to bring a lot of uncapped or low-capped players, no one who really has a lot of experience. And not only that, but uncapped senior players or older players, like someone who's 28 or 30, who's played a couple of test matches or none at all. These aren't players for the future because they're too old, and so they're just there for a short-term solution to the problem, and yet they're completely untested. And so it's hard to figure out what exactly these players will do and what their role will be in this squad for this tour. It's really difficult to think of what the answer will be. I'll have more to say on this in the future, but my first impressions of this squad are very low. This squad does not look good, and Australia will have 3 rounds of the Sheffield Shield to get through in order to get into form and get ready. And Mitchell Starc and Josh Hazlewood have the time on their hands to get back into fitness. And then you've got Nathan Lyon, and then there's a third seamer. It might be Coulter Nile or it might be Pat Cummins, and that looks very dangerous. 4 Triple A standard test match bowlers against an English batting lineup that looks soft, that looks like they lack the number of runs under their belt. It looks very disappointing. And I don't think anything good will come of this. I think England are going to be facing a real big defeat. Like I said, the big difference is not whether England can win these Ashes. I don't think that's possible. But will they at least provide serious contest? Will they hold up Australia? Will they challenge them? Will they create exciting cricket? Or will they just roll over and become an ugly mess? So, a couple of years ago, New Zealand came over to Australia for a tour, and they were defeated 2-0 in 3 tests, and they did a good job. They were were able to hold their own. They were able to save one game by batting out Australia, and they played pretty good cricket, and it was impressive. And then the next team to tour was the West Indies, who were completely out of their league, who were overwhelmed, and the only reason it wasn't 3-0 was because the final test at Sydney was washed out. And so, what will England do? Will England provide a good contest like New Zealand, or will they just roll over like the West Indies? And I can't see them actually providing a good contest. It will take a remarkable feat from the senior players of Alastair Cook, Joe Root, James Anderson, Stuart Broad to hold off some sort of whitewash situation. When you design a test team, you need to at least think of plans B and C when you think of it, when you start building a team. You can't just imagine everything will go perfectly well and everything is going great and you only need to worry about plan A and everything else will work from there. A good team needs to have plans B and C built into their squad. And so there are two likely situations when you're in Australia in this current era that would make England be in big trouble, and they would have to abandon their plan A and go to plan B and C. So the first is if they're batting. Now you imagine a very flat wicket, and you've got Mitchell Starc and Josh Hazlewood bowling very fast and swinging the ball, and they bundle out a number of English batsmen through just superb bowling, and England are 5 for 50. And the question is, in that situation, does England have the lower order batting capable of rebuilding and counter-attacking and stopping the bleeding? Now, with Johnny Bairstow, you could say yes, but with Ben Stokes and Moeen Ali and Stuart Broad, the answer would be no, because they haven't have a proven record of being able to counter-attack and defend and rebuild. So there's no sense that they would be able to do the job of launching a Plan B revival. And the other situation would be if England are bowling. There's a pitch, it's so flat, there's no swing or no seam, no pace for the bowlers, it's just comfortable, easy pace, and you've got batsmen like David Warner and Steve Smith just stroking through the line of the ball and scoring it 4.5 runs and over, and they're 1 for 200. In that situation, you need to bring in either a seam bowling to bowl stump to stump, or spinners to try to control the game, stop the flow of runs, slow down the run rate, and start to rebuild up some pressure to get some wickets. And so this is when a real bowling attack is tested, because it's not what you just do in your first spell that matters, it's what you do in your second and third and fourth spells that really makes you a great bowler. And so the question would be, does an English bowling attack have the capacity to launch some sort of revival like that, where you stop the bleeding of runs by cutting out the bad balls, making a more defensive field, shutting off the boundaries, putting the batsman more under pressure? And the answer to that is no as well, because Moeen Ali is not capable of holding a batsman in the same way that Nathan Lyon is. And Stuart Broad and James Anderson are not capable of long second and third spells that could really shut down an innings the same way that a Josh Hazlewood or a Peter Siddle could. Ben Stokes certainly couldn't do that. Ben Stokes is too erratic and wild. And so who in the English bowling attack could possibly shut down an Australian aggressive batting innings? And the answer is no one, unless James Anderson somehow pulls out some sort of magic and bowls a really long spell. It doesn't look like England have the tools necessary to keep themselves in the game and to bring themselves back into the game when things go wrong. It seems to be a lineup that has a primary goal, a primary plan, and that's all they're going to care about. And I tell you, Joe Root is in for a world of pain if he thinks that Plan A will be sufficient to beating Australia in Australia. What we saw last summer with South Africa when they beat Australia 2-1 was that it is possible to beat Australia in Australia, but you have to really work for it, you have to work out some new plans, you have to figure out problems that you're being faced with, and to really come up with new ideas. And Faf du Plessis was able to do that, and his great praise and success came from his captaincy in able to marshal his troops to launch and to figure these out and to actually work out the right way to win against Australia. Now that was partly due to Faf du Plessis' amazing captaincy and partly due to the tools that the South African team had at their disposal. And the question is, will Joe Root be able to do something similar, or will he just be doing a repeat of what Alastair Cook did 4 years ago, where he was just powerless to face this unstoppable force of an Australian team going at full throttle? I can't see Joe Root being able to stop an Australian team when it is going fully guns blazing in both batting and bowling. Obviously there's still we are in the late September time, and it's still 2 months to go before the first test in Brisbane, and England won't be on Australian soil for at least another month, and then they have the tour matches to figure things out, get into some form, and work out the right squad that they want to bring into their first 11. So there's still time on their hands. There is still an opportunity for England to work this out and to actually build up a good solid form and 11 capable of playing good cricket. And it's way too early to make any certain predictions about what will happen. But from my point of view, the squad has just been announced. It's late September. England still haven't finished their home summer and still are a long way from coming over to Australia to start their Ashes tour. But from the squad that's been announced, I don't think that it is capable of winning the Ashes, and so I think that the Ashes will be handed back over to Australia. Like I said, there's still more to discuss about this, which can come at a later time, but I think it's time to wrap things up for now.
And that's the end of the program. You've been listening to Stumped Down the Leg Side, the cricket discussion show on Bizz 99.9 FM Substitute Radio. I'm Chukka Wilson. Until next time, keep practicing, keep your eye on the ball, and remember to turn your wrists.